Chapter 25, The Limit of Tolerance. Everyone, gather here. Melis was calling the students into the catalyzation greenhouse, a reinforced structure with enchanted glass walls and stone foundations. It was one of the safest places in the alchemy area, built to withstand chemical explosions and mana surges. Damn it, what is this? She looked around, chaos unfolding everywhere. Guards were fighting with everything they had against the dark mages who had appeared like shadows falling from the sky after a sudden explosion. They had crossed the academy's barrier like it was nothing. How was that even possible? Even though the transmutation garden was at the outer edge of the complex, Vehart Academy had a barrier that should prevent any user of corrupted mana from getting close. Quick, everyone inside. What's going on? Is this a real attack? Wasn't Vehart's barrier supposed to stop this? Why are they targeting the alchemy area? The students ran in panic, throwing questions into the air as if answers could somehow be found in their own screams. In the middle of the chaos, one student was sprinting toward the greenhouse when a fire spell cut through the air like a blazing arrow, appearing out of nowhere with a threatening glow. Whoosh, NGH. Damn it! Melis instinctively stepped in front, conjuring a mana shield. Clang! The impact cracked the shield and threw her a few steps back, but it held. What are you waiting for? Get out of here! Ah! The student, still in shock, scrambled to his feet and ran, stumbling. Who cast that spell? Melis was panting, her arm trembling. She wasn't a battle mage. She could barely maintain Tier 2 spells even when giving her all. TSK. Damn it, what are we supposed to do? Where are the other students? If she had known something like this could happen, she would have never agreed to Valterre's suggestion to scatter the students across the forest to gather ingredients. But maybe that was a good thing. If most of them were far away, maybe they wouldn't get caught up in the fight. That was what Melis held on to. What she wanted to believe. But then, as if fate itself was mocking her thoughts, a man in black clothing with an intense gaze appeared behind her. They're probably being hunted down right now. Melis spun around by reflex, ready to cast something offensive, but the man raised his hands in surrender, chuckling like this was all some joke only he found funny. She backed away, putting some distance between them. Who are you? What do you mean by that? The man stopped in front of her, tilting his head slightly. His hair was short and messy, dyed a bright green that clashed with the chaos around them, with strands falling over his forehead. Who is this guy? She couldn't recognize him. He wore a cracked metal mask covering half his face and a long cloak embroidered with twisted silver symbols, like he wanted every thread to scream for attention. Like I said, they're being hunted by my mages as we speak. What do you want with the students? Why are you attacking the academy? Why? He touched his chin, looking thoughtful, with a grin that bordered on madness. One of the reasons was to kill you. He stared at her with theatrical anticipation, as if waiting for a gasp or a scream. But when Melis didn't react and kept her calm expression, he pouted and wagged a finger. TSK. TSK, boring. You're ruining my scene. Don't mess with me. Alright, the other reason was, the man made a dramatic gesture with his fingers, drawing an X in the air like some cheap circus magician. Pfft. Of course I'm not gonna tell you. So there's more than one reason. But what? Melis tried to figure it out, but no answer came to her mind. Why would dark mages take such a huge risk? Attacking Vehart wasn't a small thing. They knew that. They weren't stupid. This could be a suicide mission. Unless they had something big to gain. The man slowly raised his hands, spinning his fingers like he was about to perform a stage trick. The air around him darkened, and a black magic circle formed beneath his feet, pulsing with twisted energy. He looked like he was having fun, like a child pretending to be a villain. Don't worry, Professor. If you really want to know more before dying, well, I'll give you a little taste. Melis stepped back half a pace. Of course, you'll have to survive this first. Cut the crap. Just tell me what you want from Vehart. No more questions, Professor. With a casual motion, like tossing confetti, he launched the spell with both hands, clapping like he was enjoying his own performance. A dark blast, like a beam of pure corruption, shot straight at Melis. Damn it, this lunatic. Light filtered through the tall branches above, casting soft beams on the ground covered with leaves and moss. The sound of birds was distant, muffled by the silent flow of mana spreading through the forest. Cain stood between the roots, unmoving, almost blending in with the forest around him. It had been 30 minutes since Cain started absorbing pure mana directly into his core. The energy flowed through the forest and gathered around him, invisible to the normal eye. But if it could be seen, it would look like dozens of faint, wavy blue lines drifting through the air like silk ribbons, wrapping around his body before fading into his skin, as if drawn into the center of his chest. I'm really absorbing mana faster. The Viralis core was known for enhancing the body, increasing physical resilience, stabilizing internal channels, and improving tolerance to magical overload. There were many effects. But for most mages, that wasn't anything special. Few cared about physical resilience when they could just cast spells from a distance. But Cain wasn't like other mages. His inertia core didn't just store mana as fuel. It converted energy into force vectors, fusing them into his body and allowing him to control momentum, direction, and impact power however he wanted. However, when he absorbed the dense energy from Viralis, something changed. Instead of just using it, it was assimilated. What I thought was a problem turned out to be a good thing. The Viralis energy reacted uniquely with the structure of his core. Not like fuel, but like a structural upgrade. As if the inertia core had gained a new internal layer. More stable. More durable. With that realization, he started to understand how he had survived absorbing the full Viralis crystal in a single night. Bastard, did he steal from me? Most of the absorbed energy had gone into upgrading his internal core, not as fuel, but as reinforcement. And maybe that's why the way he stored mana was now different. He could absorb more smoothly, and in greater volume. In the game Chronos Realms that Cain knew, everything was about energy bars and flashy effects, with no way to really feel any of this. But here, with mana entering his body so gently, Cain could feel the difference. Even if just a little, he knew he had improved. A bit farther away, Marco and Yen walked through the underbrush, watching the ground and the roots closely. They were collecting strange magical herbs, like red branches and leaves with golden patches, the ones Cain had pointed out earlier. Professor Melis had asked the students to create a solution of elemental purification, and since they didn't know the traditional ingredients, Cain suggested an alternative combination. Yen was examining one of the branches. She sniffed the tip cautiously, then immediately wrinkled her nose. Ugh, that's disgusting. She quickly turned her head away, making a face of pure disgust. The smell was unbearable. It was like rot mixed with acid, as if she'd stuck her face in a bucket of spoiled sulfur. Are you sure this is right? I don't know either, but if he said it, then it probably is. You really trust that lunatic? Marco scratched his cheek, thinking for a moment as he stared at the weird-looking branch in his hand. Well, I don't really know what else to collect, so, seriously? So you're just going with the only option you've got? Let's just grab these and get out, THUUUUM. The sound was deep and distant, like muffled thunder echoing through the trees. What was that? Marco looked around, tense. Yen also stopped and turned her head in the direction of the noise. It sounded like it came from the transmutation garden, where the professor was. We better get back now. Let's talk to that other idiot. What did she mean by other? Alright, let's go. Marco started stuffing the herbs into the cloth bag. He wasn't sure what any of them were. Flowers, stems, thick leaves, everything looked like an ingredient, but he didn't know the names. I hope Cain knows what he's doing. As he crouched down to tie the bag shut, Yen froze. A shiver ran down her spine. Her eyes narrowed. Something was coming. Crash! She spun around and raised a magical barrier in front of Marco just in time. A tall, muscular man burst through the undergrowth like a charging beast. Thram! His outstretched arm slammed into the barrier, sending out a wave of force that made the magic vibrate. TSK. I was aiming for the boy. His hand had hit Yen's shield instead of Marco, who was now on the ground, shocked. Now brace for impact. He jumped back, putting distance between himself and Yen. Boom! Yen's barrier exploded in a blast of force and heat, launching both her and Marco backwards. Marco hit a thick root and let out a groan. Yen rolled across the ground and got to her knees with effort. Her left arm trembled from the pressure of the magical backlash. What kind of spell was that? The man wore dark clothes, scorched leather, and had bands wrapped around his right arm. His head was shaved on the sides, and old burn marks ran along both arms. He snapped his fingers, sparks crackling from a red-tinged bracelet. Two more figures stepped out from the bushes behind him. The first was a scrawny, irritated-looking boy with a bag slung over his shoulder. Are you insane? You almost killed her. The brute just turned his head with no hint of guilt. She got in the way. Not my fault. You really are a beast. What did you say? As they argued, a third figure appeared from the trees. A woman with short pink hair and steady, commanding eyes. Yen froze when she saw her. No doubt, she's the one in charge. She glanced at Marco, who was still getting up, dazed. This wasn't a test. If that attack had hit Marco or even her, the damage would have been serious. The woman stepped forward, stopping just ahead of her companions. Her cold eyes settled on Marco with clear disdain. He's irrelevant. Get rid of him. We only need the girl. Heh, sure. The brute started walking slowly, each step heavy and sinking into the damp soil. Sorry, kid, nothing personal. As he got closer, his pace picked up. The slow walk turned into a jog, then into a full sprint straight toward Marco. Marco's eyes widened, frozen in place. His body ached too much to react. Yen stood up, her arm shaking as she tried to cast another spell, knowing she wouldn't make it in time. Shit, then, without warning, the trees trembled. Zoom! An invisible pressure swept through the forest like a silent thunderclap. A muffled sound burst out, followed by a sharp snap in the air. Voom! The brute, mid-sprint, felt the pressure before seeing anything. Instinctively, he crossed his arms to shield himself. Thram! The impact hit like a punch from the forest itself. The invisible vector struck his forearms with massive force, cracking the skin on impact. He was launched backward, flipping through the air, feet lifting off the ground as if yanked by an unseen force. Crash! His body crashed through two trees and tumbled through the brush. Silence fell. No one understood what had just happened. The pink-haired woman's eyes widened briefly in surprise. He was charging 1 second, and flying the next? What was that? Then she felt it, an overwhelming presence pressing from ahead. An aura so dense and heavy it couldn't be ignored. She didn't hesitate. Get ready. She spoke firmly to her companion while keeping her eyes locked on the source of the pressure. Then Cain stepped out from the bushes. Chapter 26 Rejection. Celaya, who is that kid? The woman with pink hair conjured black shadows into the palm of her hand, shaping them into a thin, curved blade that looked like a katana made of pure dark energy. No idea, but stay sharp. That kid isn't normal. Yeah, I noticed. How did Velcro go flying like that? Everything had happened too fast for anyone to make sense of it. 1 second, the brute called Velcro was launched away like he'd been hit by an invisible beast. The next, a boy appeared, radiating a thick, suffocating mana. For Celaya, the worst part was that she hadn't felt a thing until it was too late. How did I not sense that energy? She narrowed her eyes at the boy now calmly walking toward the other two. Cain stopped in front of them, a slight smile on his face. Well, at least you're still alive. Yen stared at him in shock. You're joking at a time like this? She was being healed by Marco, who was using light magic. Good thing simple healing doesn't need much concentration, because he's sweating bullets trying to stay calm. I thought I'd at least get a thank you, sigh. Yen couldn't believe what she was seeing. Either Kane truly wasn't afraid, or he wasn't grasping the situation at all. You, Marco. Kane cut her off right away, calling Marco's name. Ha? Why yeah. He was still facing away from them. But this time, Kane's smile vanished. His eyes turned sharp, heavier than any joke. You and Yen handle the short one. I'll deal with the other two. What? Are you insane? Yen stared at him, stunned. Sure, he was strong, but two at once? And worse, the brute who'd been launched was already walking back from the forest, cracking his neck like nothing had happened. The one who looked like a kid was maybe a support class 3 at best. But the other two, they were clearly above that. Don't space out now, Yen, they're here for you. She froze. That confirmed everything she had already suspected. Why they avoided her during the attack. Why Marco was the only one directly targeted. If you want to help, finish the short guy as fast as you can. Who are you calling short? The mage yelled from across the field. Velcro, kill that brat too. He pointed at Kane like it was a simple request. TSK. You think I'm your lackey? I saved your life. Didn't ask for your help. Velcro glanced at his hands. They were still trembling. The force of the impact hadn't gone away. The truth was, it would have been worse if Draven hadn't silently put up a barrier at the last second. So now what, Celaya? 3 kids, and one of them isn't normal. What do we do? Celaya didn't respond right away. The blade in her hand pulsed as dark energy flowed around it like a living aura. She pointed it straight at Kane. Like you said, we just want the girl from the magic tower. If you two step aside, I'll let you walk away unharmed. Kane blinked, processing her words. Really? You'll let us go? Just like that? Yes. Celaya, are you serious? You're really going to let them? She raised her hand, and Draven instantly went quiet. Kane's energy felt normal, but something about it bothered Celaya. It was unstable. Way too dense. And worst of all, it kept growing. How could he be just a regular kid? Maybe he's her bodyguard. Let's find out. She stared at Kane, waiting for his answer. Clap. Kane clapped once. Marco, let's go before I change my mind. What? This arrogant punk, let's just kill them already, Celaya. Marco had just finished healing Yen, but couldn't believe what Kane said. Was that it? They were leaving Yen there? Did that make any sense? He looked at Yen, who was still recovering from the earlier hit. She didn't say a word. Just stared at the ground like she had already accepted her fate. Go. I don't care. But, Yen, shut up. Stop playing the hero. Don't throw your life away for nothing. Marco stepped back, biting his lip. Risking everything for nothing? Was that really it? He looked at Kane, who stood silently in front of him. Kane's gaze was on the ground, like the conversation was over. But something was off now. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of Kane's face, and his breathing was starting to grow heavy. He's scared too? It made sense. Who would be willing to throw their life away for one person? But Marco, could he really just turn his back? What if Yen died right there? Damn it, damn it. Kane. I don't think I'm going with you. What? You idiot. I told you both to leave me TSK, you guys take too long to make a simple choice. Kane was sweating more than before. His breathing was getting heavier. What should I call this? He mumbled while staring at the ground, his hands still clenched since he clapped. What are you talking about? Slowly, Kane started to open his hand. At that moment, a concentrated and absurd pressure began to leak from his palms. Yen's eyes widened. What is that? Her voice came out as a near-choked whisper. The air around them vibrated, warping invisibly. A faint mist of raw mana started seeping out. Marco raised his arm to shield his face from the growing pressure surrounding Kane. This guy, he was storing that much energy? How did I not notice? There had been no shift in the air or magical trace. Marco started to realize Kane was probably sweating because of this. On the other side, Celia's eyes narrowed. What kind of spell is that? No one knew what Kane was doing, but one thing was clear: he was holding back a force that was begging to be unleashed. Velcro charged forward. TSK. The brat was just stalling. Velcro! Don't go near him! Celia screamed, trying to stop him. He's an idiot. But it was too late. The brute charged straight at Kane. Come on then. The pressure around Kane increased again. His hands began to tremble, and cracks started forming in his own skin. Let's call this the rejection core. A line of energy tore through the air like a buzzing magical rift. Kane opened his hands completely. Zoom! A wave of magic burst out, flinging Marco and Yen backward with the unleashed force. Ugh! Af! Velcro, who had been charging forward, suddenly felt his feet sink into the ground under the pressure. I'm gonna kill you, kid. Kane extended his hand, energy leaking from it like steam. You're really, unbelievably dumb. The rejection core was launched with devastating force, like the air itself had been kicked away. The energy exploded outward silently, but instead of fading, it gained speed, as if the compressed pressure kept expanding without resistance. Nothing was pulled in. Everything was pushed, broken, repelled. A space where existing became impossible. Damn! What kind of attack is this? Velcro was hit head-on, his body dragged by the growing wave of dense force. Dravan reacted quickly, conjuring a barrier around himself and Celia. At the same time, Celia raised a wall of condensed shadow. Who is this kid? The students began arriving at the transmutation garden, confused by the situation. One of them was Iris, who looked around with narrowed eyes, unsure of what was going on. Why were the guards fighting against dark mages? And why did those mages seem interested in nothing but chaos? While running, Iris spotted a group approaching from the opposite direction. Elena, Raiden, and Lyra were moving with focus, heading straight toward the catalyzation greenhouse. What is she trying to do? Damn, we have to get there in time. Elena ran ahead. Her expression was more confident than ever, but her clenched fists made it clear she wasn't underestimating what was coming. She knew that if something happened to Melis, her assistant would take over. And that man, he'd do anything for personal gain. If he took the professor's position, the entire academy would be in danger. Elena, did you know this would happen? Raiden's question pulled her out of her thoughts. He was running beside her, his eyes fixed on her face, maybe waiting for a reaction. What am I supposed to say? She opened her mouth, thinking of a response, but there was no time. The group had reached the greenhouse. The field in front of it was shattered. And at the center, like a final act in a twisted play, stood the green-haired man with a mask, raising his hands with a crooked smile. Toward Melis, he launched a dark spiral of energy that began to spin like a hurricane of corruption. Shit! Lyra! On it! Elena stepped forward, summoning fire into her palm. The spell took shape fast, spinning like a flaming arrow. Without hesitation, she fired. Whoosh! At the same time, the air howled beside her. Lyra extended her arm, mana forming with impressive fluidity. A high-speed burst of rotating wind joined Elena's flame, colliding with the dark spell. The black energy shuddered. Its edges began to unravel. The attack weakened and exploded before reaching Melis, fading into sparks and ashes. Impressive. Raiden couldn't help but admire the natural teamwork between Elena and Lyra. He moved next to the professor. Professor Melis, are you all right? The woman's breathing was uneven. Her robe was torn, her eyes filled with tension. What are you three doing here? Seeing all three of them there, she didn't know whether to feel relieved or desperate. You need to get out of here right now. Professor, what's going on? I don't know either, they just showed up out of nowhere. That was rude. Very rude. The voice came from above. The masked mage leaned forward and began approaching, smiling like he was enjoying the chaos. He rolled his shoulders in exaggerated fashion, like an actor mocking his own awkward entrance. I really didn't appreciate how disrespectful you kids were, the mage descended and raised a finger. Professor. I was being polite with you. But it seems you'd prefer if I got serious. In that moment, everyone felt it. A heavy presence filled the air. The mana clung to their skin with a suffocating pressure. It wasn't just the absurd amount of energy, the killing intent spreading across the field made Elena's neck hair stand on end. It felt like the world had been swallowed by invisible poison.